we're turned around. This is one of those magical moments, those bucket list moments that just brings you to tears when you visit something, a place like this that you've read so much about. Simply amazing, and I hope everybody gets the opportunity to visit Niagara Falls. How about this? Absolutely magical. If you have the chance to visit Niagara, take it. This is just breathtaking. It just melts your heart. Trust me on this.
Taking my chances along with my dreams.
This is a win-win trip. Being able to share this adventure with my brother Vernon and his wife Glenda made it all the more special. We're going to go with this tour, the Grey Line tour. We're on the American side, and the tour includes everything here. It's a 4-hour tour. It's usually $154, but we are buying tickets within the hour, so we're paying $131. And the shuttle departs from right here. So I'm super excited. So Toby, who looks amazing, is an amazing tour guide, because she very humbly told us about this amazing tour. And we came back and she told us it was a tour like in 30 minutes, and she's gonna make sure we are going to make that shuttle. So if you are in the area, use Toby at Grey Line. How long you been in the tour business?
Started in 1979.
1979. So you can trust Toby for your tours. Awesome. Thank you, Toby. So our tour guide, his name is Bob, and we're all wearing Bob tags. And this is perfect because it's starting to rain, and we get to tour inside a bus. So this is cool.
So the Maid of the Mist is a privately owned company which has been in operation since 1846. Now, for all that time, up until only a few years ago, they did offer the boat rides both on the American and the Canadian side. It was maybe about 6-7 years ago now when a company out of San Francisco was able to purchase the rights to do the boat rides on the Canadian side. So it is a different company over there, and a different boat altogether. Speaking of different boats, just a few years ago, the Maid of the Mist Corporation built 2 new boats. These boats are all electric, and they are the first of their kind in the country. They're able to do some maneuvers that the old diesel engine boats weren't able to do. And along with the boat ride, we'll get you up on the observation deck, and you guys will get a great view of all 3 falls.
We are off to take the Maid of the Mist. It's already misty. We are already wet before we even get to the falls. I'm super excited. Are you? So the tour includes all the tickets. We just walked through. Bob passed us our ticket, and that made it easy. So that's the bridge over to Canada. That's the Canadian side. We are taking the tour on the American side today. Tomorrow we're going over to the Canadian side. Excuse me, you dropped your ticket. Can you grab his ticket? Yeah. Sorry.
Wow.
Almost went over. You're welcome. There's a Maid of the Mist down there waiting for that big building. That's a casino.
Let me get front here, so head of the bar. All right,
Go ahead,
here we
Bob.
go.
Oh, look at those cliffs and things.
You're all set for it.
Hi. Okay.
Come hang out with me.
So we're taking an elevator.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
Taking an elevator
Wonderful.
down to the falls, apparently. Well, to the Maiden of the Mist. Maid of the Mist.
There's usually a line going back up. Just don't be the last. But today you're obviously not real crowded. So you're gonna get your poncho down here.
Maid of the Mist. And there she is, the Maid of the Mist. Everybody got the memo to dress alike. Everybody's dressed in blue. Here's where we all get to dress alike in our blue ponchos. They had like 1 million in there.
You know why we can't have no swimming?
Why?
Because everybody thought we were making people walk the plank when they jump off the diving board.
Oh,
They thought it was
no.
Beauty on the Mountain.
Oh my goodness, look at where we were. Whoa. We just came down that elevator going 500 feet per minute. Wowee. And our next stop is the falls. Yay, we can see the mist already. Super cool. And there's casinos on both sides, on the American side and the Canadian side. This ride is a guaranteed to get wet on too. So everyone gets a poncho.
No swings, or no.
I think that's baby Niagara right over there.
No, stay here, Mom.
Tiny little fall. All geared up because we're going to get wet. I guess not that much, but
of the United States and Canada since 1846. The first Maid of the Mist vessel was a twin-stack coal-fired steamer. In 1885, our boats evolved to single-stack steamboats that ventured closer to the Horseshoe Falls than any boat ever had before. In 1955, the first modern Maid of the Mist boat entered the river, made of steel and powered by twin diesel engines. We appreciate and enjoy the beauty of this natural wonder just as much as our thousands of yearly visitors. And we know we have a responsibility to help protect them. That's why we created two of North America's first newly built all-electric vessels. These zero-emission boats offer an experience that is undisturbed by engine noise, vibration, or exhaust fumes, and are unlike any 12,000 visitors. It calls for 7 miles, or about 11 kilometers downriver at Lewiston. You see them now at the present location because of erosion. This happens at a rate of approximately 6 feet, or 2 meters a year. Most of the rock at the base of the falls fell during 2 spectacular rock slides in 1931 and 1954. The small falls to the right of the American Falls is called the Bridal Bed. The walkway at its foot leads to the Cave of the Winds. Separating the American Falls from the Canadian Falls is Goat Island.
that's the Cave of the Winds. Right, that's the boardwalk right there.
That propulsion system, which includes thrusters in each hull. These eliminate the need for rudders, providing excellent maneuverability in all situations, along with an honor the inventor and electrical engineer. Tesla made history when he harnessed the energy of Niagara Falls to create power that could travel great distances. It was a massive engineering breakthrough, pioneered right here at Niagara, changing our lives forever. The James B. Glynn is named for the chairman and chief executive officer of Maid of the Mist. Glynn joined the company in 1950 as a ticket seller. During his tenure, Maid of the Mist expanded operations, achieving 10-fold growth. In 2020, in his 70th year, named Annie Tabor. Annie was 63 years old when she went over the falls in a wooden barrel and lived. In 1960, an almost unbelievable event occurred. A 7-year-old boy named Roger Woodward was swept over the falls, wearing only a bathing suit and a simple life jacket. It was a miracle that he survived. Roger was rescued, almost at this exact spot, by a Maid of the Mist boat.
Wow.
Stood before 600,000 gallons, or 2.3 million liters of water, pouring over the falls per second. That rush is what makes Niagara Falls one of the world's largest sources of clean hydroelectric power, providing up to 2.5 million kilowatts. The charging system fully charges each boat in 7 minutes, and does so without disruption to our boarding or disembarking process.
So here are the charges. It only takes 7 minutes to recharge the Maid of the Mist.
Pretty incredible, right? Give a visiting sign. See the boat?
So this is America, this is the US, and that is Canada, right there. And you can actually walk across the bridge from the US to Canada. Make sure and have your passports with you. But this is the bridge. This is the bridge that will take you from the US to Canada. Pretty incredible, right? This place is amazing.
Roger Woodward and his 17-year-old sister Deanne in a 12-foot aluminum fishing boat with a 7.5 horsepower engine. And he wanted to show the kids the rapids, which was not a good idea because when he tried to turn the boat around, something happened to the engine, couldn't get it started again. Well, he had 2 life jackets on the boat, and of course the kids had them on. He didn't have one for himself. And he was frantically rowing to try to get the boat back into safe waters. And unfortunately, it wasn't going to happen. Eventually, the boat capsized and they were in the water. The 17-year-old girl started drifting toward the shoreline of the Horseshoe Falls. Now, people on the shore saw her in the water and they screamed for her to swim over to them. And she got right to the very edge. Right before she went over, 2 men jumped over the railing. They reached out. And on the first attempt, they actually missed her. On the second attempt, they said that she caught onto one of their thumbs, believe it or not. And they were able to pull her back in. Now, Jim the man and little Roger weren't so lucky because they went over the falls. Unfortunately, Jim did not survive, but Roger was only 7, and he only weighed 55 pounds. And they figured because he was so light that the force of the water kind of threw him over the falls, and he missed the rocks immediately down below. When the Maid of the Mist just happened to be in the area at the time and saw something floating around in the water, sure enough, it was little Roger. They pulled him out with nothing more than a few bumps and bruises. I always refer to that as the miracle at Niagara. Oh, and one more thing. Now, what if I told you that today I am that young man? I'm not. I'm just saying, what if I told you? Come on.
Make the story.
I had to change my name. So everywhere along the gorge here is where the falls were at some point in its history. And about 600 years ago, when they was split off and formed the 3 separate falls that make up Niagara Falls today. So all of this area around here is part of what's called an escarpment. Now basically that's a mountain-type ridge or cliff that extends all the way from Rochester, New York, maybe about 100 miles east of here, goes up into Canada, and then it goes down into the Wisconsin area. There's the Wisconsin connection. An area called the Dells, which you're probably familiar with, right? It's all the same part of the same rocky formation. It's all the same. So it's about a 600-mile area. So when the 5 Great Lakes were formed so many thousands of years ago, it was the rain and the runoff from 4 out of the 5 Great Lakes which carved out the Niagara River. And that's what created Niagara Falls as the water poured over the Niagara portion of the escarpment. You see, all that water was trying to find an outlet to the ocean. So what you have is Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron. They all flow into Lake Erie. Lake Erie then flows into Lake Ontario through the Niagara River. And once that water gets out to Lake Ontario, it ends up going out to the Atlantic Ocean through the St. Lawrence River. So those 5 Great Lakes make up 1/5 of the world's free fresh water supply. And that would be fresh water that isn't frozen in polar ice caps. So think about that. 20% of the world's fresh water is right here in the Great Lakes. I'm sure you already figured out on the other side of the gorge there is Canada. But maybe you didn't know this, that the border between the 2 countries is actually in the center of the river. So we do share the river, which, by the way, technically is a strait. And what that is a narrow body of water connecting 2 other bodies of water. So this is one of 3 bridges in the area that connect the 2 countries. You notice there's really not a lot of traffic here at this bridge because it is a private bridge. So you get pre-screened, you get what's called a Nexus Pass right here. And you don't have to go through customs every time you go over. There's a lot of people that work on either side of the border. Of course, it makes it easier for them to go back and forth. There's a drop of 326 feet from Lake Erie down to Lake Ontario, with about half of that coming right at the falls. But the unusual thing about the Niagara River is that it runs north. So our next stop is going to be at a point where Niagara Falls was about 7,000 years ago. So at this juncture, there was an old river gorge that had been filled in with rock from the last of the great glaciers. Now as Niagara Falls was eroding back, it recarved out a portion of that old river gorge, creating a whirlpool.
There's them. And this is us. This is the Whirlpool State Park, part of our tour. I guess it's going to be like a whirlpool something. We'll soon see.
Because they take water before it goes over the falls for the hydroelectric power plants. Canada's is directly across from ours. The water travels out there in tunnels. There are 2 tunnels on either side. On our side, the tunnels are 44 by 66 feet high, concrete conduits 4 miles long underneath the city of Niagara Falls. On the Canadian side, the tunnels are actually longer. They have further to go. So the water is first delivered to a 1,900-acre reservoir in the rear, where they store extra water that they take at night to use in the day when they need more electricity. And then they pump the water down the penstocks, goes down, it turns the turbines, creates the electricity, and then of course back into the river. So the Robert Moses Hydroelectric Power Plant is one of the largest in the world. And the electricity that's produced at this plant actually goes to about 6 different states. In fact, a lot of it goes off to Manhattan in New York. Okay?
They need a lot.
Excuse me. Took 10,000 men working 24 hours a day to build this. 3 years. It was completed in 1961. They say the concrete in here can build a highway from here to Florida. So much concrete.
Wow.
Now, you're going to be surprised on how much the water that they do take. But I'm just going to wait a little bit before I tell you, okay? So we're going to walk down.
Rivers flow
Excuse me?
How much of the river's flow that is taken? You'll tell us that.
I will tell you that.
Okay. I wanted
I'm
to
going to keep you in suspense.
Wait, there's
Okay.
more.
All right, so we're going to walk down this path there. Be careful because it's kind of rough. We'll get a better look at the whirlpool down here.
Oh, cool. So the water flows up. The statistics is absolutely incredible, right? There's something on the other side. I can see on the Canadian side, like a, that must be the zip line over there or something like that. Now you can see why they call it a whirlpool. And there's like a cable car going right over it. There is the cable car. That's pretty cool. I'm thinking you take that from the Canadian side. Pretty cool.
Guys, so the water's down in the whirlpool about 150 to 200 feet deep. Okay, there's some great fishing down there. Generally, you can see people on the shoreline. There are paths that you can take down on the Canadian side. On our side, there are steps you can take to get down there. And then there's different trails that you can do. But the most unique thing about the whirlpool is it actually changes directions twice a day.
Whoa.
This has to do with the amount of water that's taken for hydroelectric power. So back in 1950, the United States and Canada signed a treaty about how much water could be taken. At that time, they made a statement that read, in order to preserve the beauty of the falls, that during daylight hours and during the peak tourist season from April through October, they would take only, drum roll please, half the water. That means when you see Niagara Falls today, you're actually only seeing half of the water that would naturally go over, because that other half is being diverted out to the power plants. But at nighttime and after October 31st, they take even more water. They take 3/4 of the water at that time. So when that happens, the whirlpool ends up going in the opposite direction. Now, having said that, I have to explain something to you, okay? So, let's take a look at the whirlpool for a minute, all right? Can you tell me which direction it's going in? Counterclockwise. Counterclockwise? Totally? If you look to the right, is it going counterclockwise?
No.
I guess, right?
Is that a trick question?
Stalled to the right? Well, here's what's happening. Now, this year has been a little bit different, but we have had a lot of rain, which means that the Great Lakes are full of more water, right? So that means more water is coming over the falls, which is, they're not taking that extra water, it's coming over the falls, which is actually affecting the whirlpool. In years past, you come out here and there was no question of it going, excuse me, in a counterclockwise direction. You'd even see a vortex in the middle. Last couple of years, there's been about 30% more water going over the falls. And you come out here and be going like this.
Wow.
You know, today I'm noticing that it's kind of
More
in
today.
between.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the car that goes across, let me tell you about that. It's called the Whirlpool Aero car, designed by a Spanish engineer in 1916. Same car that goes across today. Runs on one cable, but it is supported by 6 others. So here's an interesting story about the cable car. So years ago, Canadians would charge immigrants money to get on the cable car, people that were trying to sneak into the United States. They would tell them, when you get over the other side, sneak off, you'll be in the U.S. Guess what? Cable car goes from Canada to Canada. That's why I waited to tell you.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Full immigrants.
A lot of people on there today. I don't know if I could. Who would do that? I know I would.
I hope they're not trying to cross the border. I would do it.
You would do it?
Yeah.
Is it true
It looks really cool.
that the first man who went over the falls in the barrel died by slipping on an orange peel?
Why are you ruining the things that I'm going to tell you when we get back to the bus? Maybe.
Pretend we didn't hear it.
We will on-hear that.
Yeah, he did. So look down the cable car. This wasn't a banana. All right, guys,
Yeah.
if you follow me, we're going to go down to the next viewing spot down here.
Now you can see Now you can see the vortex of the whirlpool. Wow. Pretty amazing.
It's good, I'll just skip that part. Sauna. Well, there was an old river gorge going up that way. Alright guys, so you're looking at some of the most dangerous whitewaters in the world in this area. If you know about whitewater rafting, you know that they rate the rapids. Class 4s and 5s considered extreme. These are rated a class 6. But I've also heard 5+. I've heard that anything over a 5, they say 5+. Okay? You don't go whitewater rafting on the Niagara River. But back in the 70s, there actually was a company that wanted to give whitewater rafting rides. The authorities said, we'll allow you some test runs, but we got to make sure it's safe before we give you a license to do it. Tragically, on the first test run, 36 people aboard the raft. The raft capsized, 3 people were killed. So they never again attempted whitewater rafting rides. Okay?
Wow.
Now there are a couple boats that come down here. One's called the Whirlpool Jet Boat. Goes through some class 4 rapids around the bend, and most of their boats are open, but they do have one enclosed. But you're going to get drenched if you take the open one, and it'll come right up to here. And then there's another company that just started, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago now. It's the same ride. It's a smaller boat. And their original plan was to go all the way up to the falls and back, okay? Matter of fact, they tested it out on the Colorado River, this boat. They said if they could hug the shoreline, they were able to get back up to the falls and back. But they're just not going to let them. Another boat up there by the falls wouldn't work. So it's the same ride. It's enclosed, so you're not going to get as wet, you know.
Wow.
If you wanted to come by, are we in your way, or you can listen? Okay, you're fine. It's $3 and a word. No, a word. Guys, one more thing I'll tell you about the wire that stretches across with a cable car. Back in the 1960s, the flying Glendas, you might have heard of them. Tightrope walkers walked across that wire. Well, it was about 10 years ago now, I think, that Nick Glenda, the great-grandson of the famous Carl Glenda, walked across Niagara Falls on a tightrope. Anybody see it?
No.
Yeah, we're going to do that later.
Good thing we didn't see it yet.
I tell you, you got to read the fine print. We'll skip it today.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I got. Get some pictures. We'll head back up in a minute here, okay?
Thank you. Hey guys, this video is rather long, but we hope you'll watch it till the end because Bob, our tour guide, is an amazing tour guide. He did such a good job. So we thought that we need to include it all in our video. Sometimes we just take pieces of it. But we took the whole thing today, and we hope you'll watch it till the end and that you will be as amazed with the statistics of Niagara Falls and the beauty of Niagara Falls, as amazed as we are. As always, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget, hit the subscribe button, the like button, the notification bell, and share with a friend.
One. When they recorded the first person to go over, there has been a total of 16 people. Now, of course, before the white man got here, the Native Americans were said to have gone over in their canoes to prove how brave they were. I don't know, I got a different word for that. Yeah. But back in 1901, the Pan American Exposition was taking place in Buffalo, New York. There were thousands of people in the area. Well, there was a 63-year-old retired school teacher by the name of Annie Edson Taylor. Now, she was down on her luck. Apparently, she had no money left. And she thought, with all these people in town, if she could somehow go over Niagara Falls in a barrel and survive, maybe she could become rich and famous from it. Well, the story goes that they first sent a cat over in a barrel as a kind of a test run. Unfortunately, the cat didn't survive, but it didn't stop Annie. So she went ahead with it anyway. And they stuffed her homemade wooden barrel with a mattress and a pillow. And they pumped air into it and they sealed it up and sent her over Niagara Falls. Well, guess what? She survived. And for a while she was able to sell her memorabilia, but she did end up dying in the poorhouse. She never gained the fortune she had hoped for. She lived a long life. She lived 20 years after that, but she never got rich from it. I do want to point out this building. I want to tell you some more stories. But this building coming up on your left here, which houses the old train station next to the new one, is now an Underground Railroad museum. Okay, so this area was very instrumental in the days of the Underground Railroad. When the slaves would somehow get up north here, and there would be people here willing to help them get down to the bottom of the gorge, and there would be boats to take them over to Canada to freedom. So that's a relatively new attraction here at the museum. It's pretty interesting stuff. All right, so 10 years after Annie Taylor went over, first man went over. This sounds familiar. And he also was successful, but ironically he died years later from complications from slipping on a
orange peel.
Thank you. Hey, I work alone. So out of the 16 that went over, 10 of them survived. Pretty good odds if you're thinking about going.
When was the last time they went over?
Well, guess what? I will tell you. Just have a little patience. My friend. Okay. Now, where was I? See, I'm all discombobulated now.
Recombobulated.
Some of the stories of the people that didn't go over are rather interesting. Now, back in the early days, they would use wood for their barrels because they would begin to build these things out of fiberglass and metal and what have you. But they would place weights inside their wooden barrels in the early days as a ballast. One guy put an anvil inside the barrel with himself, and he tied his arms and legs to the top and bottom of the barrel to secure himself inside. I'm not going to tell you what happened to him because it wasn't very pretty, but obviously he didn't survive. Now another guy kind of went the opposite route, tied together 13 truck tire inner tubes. So he just tied them all together with nothing more than mesh and netting. And he called his contraption the Thing. Well, the Thing was so light that it started to break up even before it reached the brink of the falls. He didn't survive. How about the guy that tried to go over in a kayak? Well, you see now, his mother apparently had found out that he was going to do this. So she called the authorities and said, listen, my son's planning on doing this. Maybe she didn't know when, or I think she knew the day, but not what time or whatever. She said, is there anything you could do? And what they did was they lowered the amount of water going over it. As I say, that they could control the amount of water going over. So they lowered it, thinking that would stop him from doing it. He went ahead and did it anyway. And they do say that if more water was going over him, he could have possibly survived.
When someone goes over, you have to pick a spot, ideally where there are no rocks.
Good point. So, they have to go over on the Canadian side, okay? Because underneath the American and Bridalveil Falls are all the rocks. And so they have to put the craft in on the Canadian side. And I'm going to, as I tell you about the next guy that went over, probably the most unusual attempt. Hello, how are you?
That was quite an attempt.
This guy, his plan was to drive his jet ski up to the brink of the falls. And when it got to the edge, he was going to jump off, and his rocket-propelled parachute was going to float him down to safety. Well, he gets to the edge, he jumps off, the rocket takes off, but apparently the parachute wasn't securely fastened, and it never fully opened. Now, there have been few people that have gone over twice, right? So one guy went by himself the first time. The second time, he took a female companion, and they were successful both times. Now, this particular individual, by the name of Steve Trotter, wanted to be the only person to go over 3 times. So there used to be a little souvenir shop in town here that was also a Daredevil museum, because the brothers that ran the shop were on this team of this Steve Trotter. They helped him build his barrels. And so we would go in there, and one year they told us it was around 4th of July. They said Steve is planning on attempting it again. And they said that they built the barrel up in Canada, okay? And now the only problem was to get Steve over there. Well, the guy's notorious. He can't go through the border. They'll know who he is. They won't let him over. So apparently, he snuck into Canada through the woods or something. So that's always good to know. File that away. And but again, not the sharpest tack on the board. He's walking around the tourist area over there, and someone recognizes him. And whether it was the authorities or someone turned him in, and they shipped him back. So he never got a chance to be the third person to go over. Now, one other party was successful twice. The third party, well, this guy, believe it or not, jumped into Niagara Falls with nothing more than the clothes on his back. And somehow he survived. And for a while he was telling everybody that was his plan. He said, as a matter of fact, he wore 2 coats as protection. Well, later on, it sort of came out that maybe he was trying to end it all. So, but at this point now, he believes he's a daredevil. So, it was about, don't quote me on this, but I think it was about 6 years ago that he wanted to try it again. This time, they put him inside an inflated rubber ball. Unfortunately, this attempt was not successful. And that was the last time that somebody tried to go over. Goat Island is what separates the falls into the 3 different falls that there are. So there's the American and Bridal Veil Falls on one side of the island, and the Horseshoe Falls on the other side. Now on Goat Island, among other things, you guys are going to do what's called the Cave of the Winds, which is really fantastic. It's not a cave anymore. There was a cave there many years ago, but with the erosion of Niagara Falls, that cave disappeared. But it is a series of platforms that will literally take you right up into the Bridal Veil Falls. It's really quite spectacular. If you go all the way to the top deck, it's called the Hurricane Deck, so you can imagine what that's like. And when you're on the boat, you'll pass the falls and you'll see the people in the yellow ponchos on the platforms. And that's the Cave of the Winds, and that's our afternoon. Stop. That he herded all of his animals onto this island. It turned out to be such a severe winter that the only animal to survive was one single billy goat. So he named the island in honor of his goat, and that name has stuck throughout the years. Oh, and today I am that goat. Greatest of all tour guides. You're all week. No applause. Just throw money. All right, so we're driving over the rapids that lead to the American and Bridal Veil Falls. And those waters are going about 25 to 30 miles an hour. Right, to the falls. So all of this land around here, about a little over 130 years ago, was all privately owned. And the owners of the land used to charge people 25 cents to view the falls through a hole in a fence. I'm not kidding. But 2 men were instrumental in changing all that. One was Frederick Law Olmsted. Now he was a landscape architect who designed several parks in the country, including New York Central Park and the Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, just to name a couple. Him and Frederick Church, who was an artist at the time, spearheaded a movement to free Niagara. That was the rallying cry. And in 1885, this became just the 2nd state park in the country. And today it is the oldest state park, because the first one, which was Yellowstone, became a national park. Now, as part of the Cave of the Winds experience, just a couple years ago, they did add an exhibit area, and you'll also be seeing a short film that goes into a little more detail about some of the things I was just talking about.
It's significant because it was the first hydroelectric power plant to have alternating current electricity. They sent electricity off to Buffalo, New York, my hometown, and lit up the streetlights in Buffalo for the first time. Buffalo was the first city in our country to have electric streetlights. At that time, they called Buffalo the City of Light. In 1966, they disassembled it from the remains of the plant, reassembled it here brick by brick. You'll see the original plan in the movie you're going to see. Take a quick little stroll over there, and as I say, it's pretty quiet today, so maybe we'll just. Yeah. It's been pretty close. It's kind of just falling apart. Hey, if my minions want to come around here, I can point out some things to you, and then you can have some more time in here. If you're a minion, you can come around. You don't have to if you're not. So I like this because it does give you an overview. So this is where we started out today. Here's the whirlpool. Well, we didn't. We started at the boat, but normally we would. Okay, so here's the power plant. We viewed it from here. There's the 1,900-acre reservoir that I spoke about. Our intakes are up there, go underneath the city of Niagara Falls. Here's Canada's hydroelectric power plant. Their reservoir is back here somewhere. Their intakes are right over there. Matter of fact, let's trade places here. I'll point out something to you here. So their intakes are, I think, right here, okay? So their tunnels go all the way around this way. Here's Goat Island, which we're on now. Basically, where the map ends is where the falls began. This is the erosion of the falls in all those years. How many miles? 7 miles. Very good. Okay, this here is called the International Control Dam. All right, that was built collectively between the United States and Canada in 1915. It has 18 gates in it. All right, 1950. It has 18 gates that can either open or close, so it has several purposes. One of the things that it can do is help divert water towards their intakes over here. The other thing is that they can control like where the water goes to a certain degree. So if you notice the Horseshoe Falls, how drastically it's getting in the center, so a lot of times they'll divert the water around the perimeter of the falls. So they'll keep the gates in the center closed, and it just sort of helps with the erosion. But the other thing that it does, it diverts water towards the American and Bridal Veil Falls. Look at the difference between the falls and how much water it goes over. Actually, only 10% of the water that goes over Niagara Falls goes over the American and Bridal Veil Falls. So had the International Dam not been built, they say that American and Bridal Veil Falls could have eventually dried up. So, interesting stuff. So anyway, you can click on the different pictures. You got all this stuff in here on the walls. My group, please enjoy. The doors will open up to the movie in 5 minutes.
Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Excessive collapse hurled 3 men from the plant, killing 1, while the rest of the 40-man shift somehow managed to escape the terrifying disaster. The cost is estimated at an astounding $100 million. The Shulkoff family has been harnessing hydroelectric power from the mighty Niagara as far back as 1881. Over the years, the company built 2 power plants with 3 stations, making it the largest facility in the Mohawk system.
So we'll take you down to the bottom of the gorge. If you don't have your poncho, they'll give you another one down there. It is a self-guided tour. We usually do about a half an hour.
Cave of the Winds. Thank you. We are heading down into Cave of the Winds so that we can feel what 60,000 gallons of water per second feels like on our head. So we are all geared up with our rain ponchos heading down to this area of Niagara. Wow. That is the hurricane level. Whoa. This experience is absolutely incredible. I couldn't carry my phone and camera up there because I was afraid everything was going to be wet. But it's simply amazing. You have to come to Niagara and do this Cave of the Winds. It's like being in a small hurricane or a tropical storm. When the water comes down and the wind comes from it, it's just simply, I can't even describe it to you. You have to experience this for yourself. So spectacular. So these are the boards that this walkway is made of, and I think you heard it somewhere on the video. I believe somebody was telling us that every winter they take this down because the ice coming down would break it, would destroy it. So they disassemble this whole walkway, a group of men, no power tools. It takes them like a month to disassemble the whole thing, and then they put it back up in the spring. Just the statistics of that is like pretty incredible. We're heading back to the elevator to go back up now. So we're heading down Terrapin Point, and the closer you get, you can feel the water. I can't imagine looking at that rush of water and thinking to myself, ooh, I'd like to jump down there or get in a barrel or something like that. That's just crazy. Oh, you can feel the wind. Super windy the closer we get to it. Truthfully, we could almost get out and touch it. Look at that.
You're welcome.
Nikola Tesla transformed the planet in 1896, and it started right here in Niagara Falls.
Well, people at the time, of course, they had no idea what had happened. They thought it was the end of the world. Niagara Falls had suddenly stopped. Well, after 30 hours, the winds in the lake shifted, and that broke up the ice, and all that water came surging back. Imagine how much water that was. Now, some of you might remember that in 1969, they did stop the flow of water to the American and Bridal Veil Falls. And that's because they wanted to do a study of the major rock slides that had occurred in the 1930s and in the 50s. That's why there's so many rocks down below there. What they ended up doing was anchoring down some of the rocks, and then they also put in a sensor that would let them know when another rock slide might occur. But it really was quite the attraction. People wanted to see Niagara Falls without water going over it. Actually, you may have that chance again because they've been talking about it for a couple of years. The pedestrian bridge over here to Goat Island is in need of repair, and the only way for them to fix it would be once again to build that dam and divert all the water towards the Horseshoe Falls. Now, I spoke of it earlier, but they can do that because only 10% of the water goes over the American and Bridal Veil Falls. Now, if you haven't seen the lights on the falls yet, they do come on at dusk. There are 21 lights that light up Niagara Falls, and just a few years ago, they replaced them all with LED lights. So they're actually brighter, even more colorful than they were in the past. Now, also tonight and every night all season long, at 10 o'clock, there's a short fireworks display that they shoot off right in the gorge. And anywhere that you can see the falls, of course, you can see the lights and the fireworks, and it is free to park over here on Goat Island and over by the boat where we were earlier. So after 6 o'clock, you can park for free. And if you're close enough in a hotel, you can always walk over to it. And don't forget that stuff going on 3rd Street too, different bands. Every tour is different, every day is different, and some days I enjoy myself more than others, and I don't say this to everybody. It was a good day today, I enjoyed it. You guys were a lot of fun. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Come on, Mouse, get a picture of you.
I needed to get that state park sign.
All right, so I have one stop to make before I drop off the big group. And then we'll drop off everybody else.
Seneca tribe were the first tribe into the Buffalo area. And there's this huge Seneca hotel and casino. And we are looking for dinner actually. Italian, Asian, sisters, Three Sisters Cafe. This is all in the Seneca Hotel in Buffalo and Niagara. Oh wow. And look at that screen by the check-in in this hotel. Amazing. There's Niagara. So this is Three Sisters into the Seneca Hotel. These are the appetizers. Our server's in a real rush. I'm thinking he's from New York. Just guessing. We have the honey glazed salmon with beans and mashed potatoes. My honey has the Reuben. I just love the stonework in here. This is onyx. It's just beautiful.